Hello, and welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a very interesting update about the situation in Ukraine and some significant news to share with you. Russia is finally running out of its last reserves, and it's not just ammunition. It seems that Russia has miscalculated big time when it comes to the availability of certain resources that are now becoming crucial in this war. And to my surprise, many of these resources include food, which is something that we typically don't associate with military conflicts. But as it turns out, this is not your typical war. This war has been going on for much longer than anyone anticipated. And right now, more than ever before, both sides are really feeling the effects of the economic sanctions imposed by the West. In addition to dwindling supplies of food, fuel, and ammunition, Russia is also dealing with what appears to be an internal political crisis. As more and more Russians become aware of their country's poor performance in Ukraine, they start questioning the war and its outcomes. That's why we see protests against the war happening in Russia from time to time, which of course is extremely dangerous for Putin's regime. That is why he signed a decree essentially banning any form of dissent. This decree criminalizes those who spread what Russia calls false information about its army. So if you happen to say that the Russian army is committing serious war crimes, or that it's losing thousands of men every month, you could get into serious trouble. You may face up to 15 years in prison. With that being said, let's talk about dwindling supplies of food in Russia. According to this report by The Times, it looks like Russians are about to experience shortages of basic goods this winter, including sugar, rice, pasta, sunflower oil, as well as various types of meat. Here's what the report says. Basic food staples could be in short supply in Russia as soon as this winter, after Ukraine's recent counteroffensive cut off agricultural exports from Russian-occupied areas. Grain exports from the Black Sea ports of Novorossiysk and Yekaterinburg have stopped since October due to Russia's withdrawal from the deal, and now locals fear shortages will hit home. So there is absolutely no doubt that this war has a tremendous impact on the Russian economy, which is now starting to feel the effects of the sanctions imposed by the West. Here is how. Reuters describes the current situation. Russia's economy is expected to shrink next year as Western sanctions bite, forcing ordinary Russians to tighten their belts while the Kremlin pours money into the war effort. We know that Russia keeps a sizable portion of its population in the dark when it comes to the true cost of this war. They keep saying that everything is fine, that the sanctions don't really affect them. But at this point, even a blind person can see that things are not okay. And that's exactly what we see in this video. This video was actually filmed in the Russian city of Chelyabinsk. And here we see an ordinary Russian citizen walking past a store that advertises sunflower oil at 300 rubles per liter, which is nearly $3 per liter. And it goes without saying that for the majority of Russians, this is simply unaffordable. And if you think that's expensive, take a look at the prices of other goods. For example, sugar is now sold at 120 rubles per kilogram, nearly $1.30 per kilogram. Canned fish, approximately 340 rubles, nearly $3.50 per can. And if you want to buy buckwheat, you will have to pay as much as 500 rubles per kilo, which is more than $5 per kilo. While many Russians struggle to afford these essential goods, the price of chicken remains relatively low, although it's still going up. So the price of chicken right now in Russia is approximately 400 rubles per kilo, which is a little over $4 per kilo. And it's expected that it will continue to rise as time goes by. Of course, this isn't just about higher prices. Many Russians simply cannot find these goods on store shelves. As you can see here, many stores have already run out of sugar, sunflower oil, as well as other types of cooking oil. And apparently, many Russians are trying to stock up ahead of the New Year holidays, which of course contributes to empty shelves. In many stores, mayonnaise is another item that is becoming harder and harder to find in Russia. Here's the latest update. Mayonnaise is likely to remain scarce in Russia until March, due to the unavailability of imported vegetables required for its production. Imported vegetables, particularly onions and garlic, are essential for making mayonnaise. However, due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, imports from these regions have been disrupted, leading to supply chain issues. The scarcity of imported ingredients has resulted in mayonnaise shortages across Russia with limited production capacity. Russian producers are focusing on using locally sourced ingredients, which impacts the product's overall quality and taste. Consumers are coping with the shortage by exploring alternative condiments such as ketchup and mustard. So basically, you go to the store looking for mayonnaise, and there is no mayonnaise. So you say, okay, I'll grab a bottle of ketchup instead. Well, guess what? There is no ketchup either, because Russia also imports tomatoes for ketchup. And once again, due to the ongoing conflict, there are no imports available, so there is nothing to make ketchup out of. And this, of course, extends to all sorts of other goods. We already know that Russia is struggling to produce enough bread because it doesn't have enough wheat, which it used to import from Ukraine. And this is just a small part of the economic damage caused by this war. The economic impact of this war was best described by the owner of this gas station. He said, "I never thought this would happen to our country. Look at the prices. It's crazy. No one can understand how this is possible." So let's take a moment and appreciate the genius plan that Russia had before starting this war. Russia's plan was to put sanctions on Ukraine and then use this as a bargaining chip to gain leverage against the West. What could go wrong, right? Well, as it turns out, everything went wrong. Not only did Russia fail to put sanctions on Ukraine, but the West united like never before and imposed unprecedented sanctions on Russia. Instead of helping Russia, it ended up completely destroying its own economy. And now Russia is facing a large-scale economic crisis that may take years to overcome, if it's even possible. As you can see, ordinary Russians are paying the price of this war. While the war continues, the economic situation in Russia will continue to deteriorate, and the Kremlin will need to find a way to end this war. Fortunately, it's not in Russia's best interest to end this war peacefully. That's why I believe that this war will end when Russia loses its willingness to fight, not when Ukraine is defeated. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please show your support. Give it a like, consider sharing it, and subscribing. I would love to have you back for my next one. If you enjoy reading, find me online. I recently started a newsletter that you might enjoy. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in my next one tomorrow.